Hey guys, today on ZugZug podcast we have a legendary guest, Blizzard Entertainment lead 3D artist on World of Warcraft and a real rockstar of hand-painted art, Jordan Powers by himself. Hey Jordan, how's going?
It's going. It's going. Thank you so much for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Cool. With the small introduction, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Yeah. So, hi, I'm Jordan. I'm the lead prop artist on World of Warcraft at Blizzard, um, where I've been there, for about 11 years now, making
Wow,
hand-painted art. Yeah. So my
that's
team and I make all the cool
insane.
props. Yeah. No, it's been a while. That's what I do is I do hand-painted art for World of Warcraft. My team and I make
Cool.
all the cool props that you see inside the game.
Yeah, amazing. Um, have you studied at any art schools?
Gosh, yeah. So I have a 2D illustration degree from Virginia Commonwealth University. Shout out to the Communication Arts Department,
Ooh.
um, where I really met some really incredible artists. I was actually studying sequential art, comics, graphic novels, that
Wow,
sort of
wow.
thing. And I really enjoyed the visual sort of storytelling aspect of it. And after that, I went to school for a 3D game art degree
That's
at,
interesting.
Full Sail University in Florida. I decided, this is really what I wanted to do, so I sort of put all my eggs into one basket.
Mm-hmm.
Really, really focused my efforts towards that goal, towards working in the game industry. Met a ton of awesome folks there. That's actually where I found my love for low poly hand painted art, which is taking Jeff Parrott's hand painted prop art class.
Oh,
So yeah,
so Jeff Barrett already
um,
been doing the art classes. Wow, so cool.
yeah. Out of all the facets of game art that I studied, that one really resonated with me. I got to use all of my 2D experience that I had from
Mm-hmm.
my
Mm-hmm.
previous degree. That was really the first time where I was like, I feel like work to me. Do I do I love this? I kind of love this, yeah. And that's what led me down the prop centric portfolio and launched me down this career path. Really,
Cool, cool. So that's how you decided to go for game art. Yeah, cool. What was your first paid job?
so I worked as a freelance artist for a number of years. I did some prop and environment assets for a couple of mobile and indie games, but my first major like full-time gig was an associate prop artist on World of Warcraft 11 years ago. I got
Ooh,
I got
that's
hired by
that's
Blizzard.
amazing.
Yeah,
Another
it
amazing
was a dream.
story, like first job. Oh, it's World of Warcraft, you know. Wow, crazy.
It was a dream come true, man. I got hired right after graduating from my
Mm-hmm.
3D art degree, and it was just it was so cool because World of Warcraft for me was this probably one of the most important games in my life. And I never in a million years would have believed that it was possible. But obviously I've been there ever since I love it so
Yeah,
much.
what a story, man. Super cool. Yeah, World of Warcraft is very inspiring for 100,000 artists probably, and it also inspired me to start doing 3D. You know, that's why I'm doing 3D. That's why I'm here. It's because of World of Warcraft.
It's a big game for a lot of
Yeah,
folks. It really is. Yeah.
cool. All right, maybe let's move to some stuff from your portfolio. Maybe you can share the screen and you can talk a
Sure.
little bit about your stuff. Maybe you have some stories behind on some artworks or how it all started, you know, from first artworks and so on.
Gosh, many stories I could share from over the years. I'll try to limit for a few of them for now. The first, well, I feel like I have to talk about this. I feel like it wouldn't be right if I didn't talk about
The
the
Pepe
elephant in the
guys.
room. The Pepe, yeah. So, for those unfamiliar, Pepe is a plump orange bird that sits on your head inside of World of Warcraft. He has no story. He's just there. That's all the context you need for this. So I was working back on Warlords of Draenor, working on art for Garrisons at the time, um, working alongside Eric Braddock, making just tons and tons of awesome art for Garrisons. But what we also were doing at the time was we were helping with set dressing for a lot of the Garrison buildings. So there's Horde and Alliance versions for every building. There's oftentimes ranks 1, 2, and 3 for each building.
Yeah.
Each building need to have prop placements in each of them. A lot of props. So I'd been helping with set dressing for about a month.
Wow.
And I hadn't gotten to make any new art. I felt like I was going insane. So in between tasks, I spent a little bit of time sort of like making this little bird thing that I had made for my student portfolio that I just sort of hid in there as an Easter egg. I called him Pepe.
Yeah, and this Easter egg now currently taking over World of Warcraft every expansion. Probably it's everywhere, you know. It's like Stan Lee in Marvel movies. It's always Easter about him. Easter egg.
That's a great analogy. I'm gonna steal that. I keep joking to my team. They're gonna change my title to lead bird costume designer now. But slowly over the course of a few weeks, I finished him, and he's so jank. He's literally, his early iteration was literally 2 spheres sitting on top of one another, just bouncing around. No skinning, no fancy animation, just core fundamental animation principles. I think the eyes were literally 2D planes that viz on and off to give the illusion of blinking. So
that's cool.
It's super low tech, right? Eventually, a designer by the name of Jeremy Fiesel, who's now a game director, saw this thing in the commit log. He messaged me and he was like, "Hey, what is this?" And I was like, "It's just an Easter egg. Can you just like put him on a branch somewhere? He's from my student portfolio. Like I just put him somewhere. If that'd be great, that'd be awesome." He came back to me and he was like, "Hey, so I put him on people's heads, and where he rides around."
Probably you wasn't expected that.
No, I didn't. I was like, "This is the coolest thing." My mind was blown. So, fast forward when Warlords of Draenor launched, people found Pepe and just sort of fell in love with them. There's like a dozen or so plushies of him now. There's like this amazingly talented group of people that I meet at BlizzCon that do like their own.
Yeah, I also saw this some with the cosplay stuff, bird sitting on them. That's so cool.
So much of what we do on the prop art team for World of Warcraft is centered around ambient storytelling. Telling a story through the objects that we make. Supporting the overall narrative of the game or the zone that you're in. And Pepe doesn't really have a story. He's just
now there. He's part of story.
And and I think that's why people latched onto him, is that they either see the disconnect from a story, or they invent their own story in their minds and as to why he's there. And that's I don't know, to me that was really neat. I guess the next one I can talk about is Mechagon. That was a big one for me. So it was so incredibly fun to make. I think I ended up making over like 200 props in the end.
Ooh,
but
that's a lot.
Most folks, it was. I mean, it was a labor of love.
Are you doing animation also by yourself? Wow.
Yep. So one of the cool things about the prop art team is the WoW art team is very specialized, right? We do have a VFX team, we do have an animation team, but for props specifically, we do have a lot of creative freedom to bring these things to life. So we do almost all the time we do our own animation and VFX for things like this.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Just pretty cool. But I want to tell a story about Mechagon because it's not as straightforward as people think. There's a lot that can happen during the course of game dev, and this is sort of a story related to that. But Back when Battle for Azeroth was first starting, Mechagon was actually slated to be an entire zone. It was where Stormsong Valley now is. So gnomes didn't really have historically like a lot to their story in the game. They were just hacked together a couple months before release of the original like vanilla WoW back in the day. And to me, this was like the big chance to actually dive into gnomish lore, to like expand their story. And I was just so pumped because I play a gnome. My main character is a gnome.
Oh.
And I was like, this is my time. I'm ready
The
for
time
this.
has come to.
Yeah, exactly. I spent about 5 months making art for it, and there were a ton of production challenges involved with like scheduling, complications with the rig, limited time for the teams to support it, and ultimately it got cut. And um, I was really devastated. It felt like the rug had been pulled out from beneath me. So I felt like I suddenly didn't really have a chance to really prove myself. But obviously there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, we're looking at the art together right now. 6 months later, they decided to revive Mechagon. It was going to be the first patch in Battle for Azeroth. And this time it was going to be an island with a mega dungeon. And I was just like, I was so ecstatic.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Like, so many work put in and you don't know what happens next.
Yep. And I got to repurpose a lot of the early viz dev, a lot of the early props that we did too. So looking back on it, I was very lucky because in game dev sometimes things do unfortunately get cut, and that's kind of a reality of game dev or just the creative process in general. So that whole experience, I would say, that roller coaster of emotions during that year was really a learning experience for me. I think ultimately I learned to be more open-minded, to be more pragmatic and flexible. And it's important to be passionate about what we do, for sure, especially in game art. But I think when you let passion dictate your every move, that's when things get complicated. So striking that balance between pragmatism and passion is really, one of the things that I learned about this whole experience. But I am really proud of the art that we made in the end. It was a really fun mega dungeon.
Yep, exactly. It's amazing zone. I love it so much. I've been making screenshots all around with every pixel there, exploring everything you guys done. Yeah, and I even currently like super excited about this zone, so I'm just making fan art in my free time with this Mechagon mono wheel mount, remaking it a bit.
Oh, the spinning wheel one, right?
Yeah, I'm making a horde version for it. Just for fun and just very inspired by your stuff.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, this was definitely a labor of love, and there's, like you said, there's so much cool stuff there. It's every time I revisit that area, I feel like I see something new.
Yeah, it's not easy to develop all the shapes for like this race and everything's design. For the prop artist, it's actually crazy amount of work.
Yeah, there's a lot of components to stuff like this, but we had a lot of fun designing it, and we got to reuse a lot of the stuff that we did. No wasted work. It was all
exploration, tasting, and yeah.
I could talk about the profession tables in Dragonflight. Those were a lot of fun to make.
Yeah, I think those are the most detailed 3D models in the whole World of Warcraft. When you're walking around Dragonflight, like this Dragon City, my artist eye just catching these tables and hey, those ones have like 10 times like more details than everything else around, the like environment, buildings, and so on.
Yeah. Thank you for noticing that, man. That warms my heart that people are looking at these things. I I think so much of what we do as prop artists too. You hear that phrase where it's like, oh, if you don't pay attention or notice a lot of the props, then that means they're doing their job well. But that kind of ties into what I wanted to talk about here, which was um, some of the unique challenges of making stuff like this. Is like called a hero prop, right? Like something that you study, you look at that has some visual impact. For the past several years before I started these, like I did the
Mm-hmm.
garden in Dragonflight, which is full of a lot of organic shapes and strange looking obsidian metal stuff. And then before that, I was working on the Necrolord kit for Maldraxxus, which is full of a lot of organic shapes
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
organic surfaces and things like that. And I was prop art supervisor at the time when I started these, and um, I saw them on the docket of what needed to get made, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do these. And my producer was like, okay, well, we need one of these for each crafting profession, and you only have this much time to do each one. Because you think you can do it? And I was
Oh,
like,
so otherwise they will be split like between different artists, probably. Yeah.
yeah. Or like, do we need to like get creative and start kit bashing or borrowing things to make this
Mm-hmm.
less of a heavy lift? Um, he's like, yeah, you think you can do it? And I was like, sure, I'll make it work. Like very confidently, even though I was kind of screaming internally as to how I was going to do all this stuff. But it was such a cool opportunity because we haven't really codified the visuals of these professions before, right? Like it was always just sort of an afterthought. So I wanted to do that. I kind of wanted to like perhaps selfishly show the power that you know props can have on a space. Um, that they can have like a big visual impact. They can have that sort of like visual stopping power of maybe something as cool as like a really awesome character design. So I planned out how I was going to do each table before I began. That I had like a main focal point right here, in the center, like a visual anchor, and then I had supporting elements surrounding each one. And things like the metal pipes in the back, some of them are reused on different assets, like right here. It's just retextured. I knew I was going to be able to save some time that
Mm-hmm.
way
Mm-hmm.
by just modify and tweak. And that way, I could focus on making the cool new thing in the center that you really, really focus in on. So, yes, there are some repeated elements with like books, jars, papers um, that you see
I
on
actually
some of these.
never thought about it that something is reused. It so looks at it boys and painted so well. So it's very hard to find that it's reused.
Well, you're kind to say that. Thanks, man. I so much of what we do is smoke and mirrors. So when you layer stuff on top of it, like a really cool focal point, you don't really notice the reused app. And I wanted to be smart about where I was spending my time, my painting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what about animations? Are you planning it from the beginning or just some improvisation at the end?
Some things I do, like I did plan like the engineering table. I knew I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to have like a bomb looks like it's about to explode. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to
Mm-hmm.
have that grabby hand do some stuff. There were elements on here like on the alchemy stuff. I want the Bunsen burner. I want the pipes jiggling. So certain things I did know that I was going to do. The jewel crafting one was the one that I didn't really plan. It just sort of happened after I made it, where I was like, oh, I could do like a little fake magnifying glass thing and right here. Uh, but yeah, I did for the most. This one was the hardest to animate because yeah, it's all done by hand, obviously, and getting it to make it look like it was actually drawing something took a
It's
lot of
looking so cool. Very cool one.
thinking. And it's it was like I said, it was a labor of love.
Yeah, that's
But
why I love World of Warcraft, because not only the characters are super detailed and have story, but all the props and all the world around. Everything is super great to look at and just explore it.
oh, thanks, man. Makes me happy to hear that. That is the goal, is to make everything seamless and everything look awesome. Even simple props like this, like it's just a scroll. There's scroll racks or things behind it. There's books. There's bottles. There's
Yeah, you can say it's simple, but for all the other guys, it's just some epic place, with a lot of cool details.
Really proud of how these things turned out. They're some of my favorites. And then this one was fun to animate too. Mobile ones.
Very cool.
And there's Alvin. Stupid anvil that I animated. Someone was like, "Can you make a battle pet anvil that's kind of like the Elec plushie that just sort of like flops around?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna add in some extra flair though. There's like a
but
Pokemon."
now he looks like really alive,
Yeah, he looks alive, and he's got like a Pokemon Metapod like harden move. I gave him that. I did the fire effects for him and everything, but
Cool.
they didn't ask for any of this. I just threw it in the file because I thought it'd be funny. This one was fun too. The Kel'Thuzad phylactery. This was used for a boss encounter. I think it's for the actual Kel'Thuzad fight. Oftentimes, what we do as prop artists is we will have a rough idea in our head of like what we're looking for. We can reach out to one of the many effects artists in the effects team and be like, "Hey, what would you recommend? What can I, can I steal a couple of particle emitters from any cool files?" And
Yeah.
they're great. They'll recommend things for you. They're like, "Hey, what school of magic is it? What are you building?" And then they can sort of like tailor recommendations for you. Oh yeah, the blowing up the crystal. That was challenging to do.
And the animation's also made by you, like Destruction, yeah.
Yeah.
Very
Some
cool.
parts are hand animated. Some parts are just part of
That's so cool. Because when I need to do something like this destruction animation, I'm messaging the animator guy. Hey, want to help me? So it's, yes, very good that you can make it by yourself without disturbing other guys.
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, a lot of it's smoke and mirrors, it's tricks. That's the thing about destruction. Whenever you do destruction animation on props or things like that, it's really about selling an idea rather than getting focused on like, oh, the trajectory of this one thing would be, this specific. You can hide a lot with an explosion.
Yeah.
And that's really what I have to keep telling myself when I do these things is, as long as it looks cool and it sells.
Yeah, and just telling that it's destroyed. I don't think players need some physics exploration there.
Exactly. This isn't CSI, This one was a challenging kit to work on as well, the Necrolord kit from Maldraxxus. We made the whole kit in about just under a year, which was a big change of pace for us. We had to find unique ways to sort of like get the look of these things without sacrificing a lot of time for modeling.
Yeah,
but
and painting bones is so difficult to add details to it.
Yeah, it was. Oh man, my Google search history for looking for texture reference was cursed for like 6 months after working on this sculpture kit. It was like, I'm pretty sure, whoever's looking at this stuff was like, this guy's looking at a lot of really gross reference images, bones and stuff. But,
yeah, that's weird.
It looked cool in the end. I think it was just.
Yeah, the results are amazing.
A lot of challenges. Thank you, man. A lot of challenges along the way. But it was fun to work on. I'm all for challenges. This one was definitely one of the more unique ones.
Cool. Then maybe let's go to some questions. What was your first model on the World of Warcraft? Like the very first?
I'm like 99% sure it was doing crates and barrels for garrisons.
Oh, the classic stuff for when you're starting.
Yeah, exactly. That's typically what we like to do for newer folks to have them start on is like a storage prop. And I remember it was actually really challenging for me because I wanted to make the most epic crate and barrel.
Overthinking, yeah.
Right, yeah, over designed, but by their very nature, crates and barrels are supposed to be simple, right? They're supposed to be
Mm-hmm.
background stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really struggling with that. I think I redid them once or twice because I wasn't really happy with them, but um, it's okay. I ended up
Yeah.
reusing or retweaking some of them for the use in the Rogue Order Hall
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
like these guys in
Oh,
Legion. So
cool.
um, wasn't all all set. I got to revisit a lot of
Mm,
these guys. These guys, yeah.
that's cool. No one gonna get that. It's just reuse it from previous expansion. It's just the hook. Like this should be here.
That was
Cool.
that was a fun one.
What was the most challenging 3D model you've been working on?
Oh, good question. Well, I'd say from in recent memory, the ones that were probably the most challenging were from the Jarden kit.
Mm-hmm.
When I say kit, by the way, this is like a term that prop kit. It's like a collection of props,
Yeah,
by the way.
yeah.
That's what I mean when I say kit. Should have prefaced that, but yeah, these were challenging for a number of reasons. First was the scale, right? Jarden are half giants, so
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
anything that I made, like a crate or a barrel, um, ended up being the size of a Tauren, which is like, massive. I think the leather sack that I painted was as big as a gnome. So the just the scale of everything, because crates and barrels are
Yeah.
usually smaller than a player, and that meant that everything that we made had to be painted to a higher fidelity because it was so big.
Yeah.
We're trying to find like a cool visual hook for them. And Matt McCune, if you're not familiar with his work, please check him out. He's done a bunch of amazing
Mm-hmm.
character and concept work for WoW. He did a couple of concepts for the Jarden where they had this sort of like obsidian metal type treatment for
Mm-hmm.
him. And that combined with their sort of mastery of lava and stuff like that was really what gave him that cool hook.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I remember seeing that concept that he did, and I was like, "Oh, that's awesome! I want to like, what if they use lava and they helped shape it, they helped forge it." Yeah, the metal was
Mm-hmm.
actually really really challenging for me to do, but
Yeah, and those
not
guys
from
are not like blacksmiths and everything isn't super
yeah
perfectly forged.
yeah. The shapes are really strange, the texturing's really strange, but the challenging part for me for this was how I approached doing the metal. I To get the metal to look this way, like you'll notice that there's a lot of warm
Mm-hmm.
colors down here, but it's also got cool colors on the top planar surfaces. To get it to look that way, I had to paint in a very muted color palette where like very, very clamped. The lower I got on the model, the lower pieces down here, I started to get like muted purples and reds. And the top planes, I had very,
Mm-hmm.
very
Mm-hmm.
muted like cyans and teals. And I painted my own environment map for these that had oranges and teals in it. And so much of what you're seeing right here with like that iridescent look comes from the environment map. So like the environment
Wow.
map's really doing the heavy lifting here. The painting itself is really, really like if you just look at the texture for this, it's
Mm-hmm.
actually quite boring. It's actually very, very muted and gray.
Um, I would not say that, but
It's, I mean, compared to what you're seeing here, right? You're
mm-hmm.
seeing like all these, you're
Yeah,
seeing
yeah.
purples and blues and reds, but you don't see that in the actual texture. It's mostly the environment map doing that,
That's
and that
very
was what was really
interesting.
challenging.
Very
Yeah,
interesting.
it was a unique way of working, but yeah, the scale and the metal I think were the two most challenging parts of this because the metal shapes were very, very strange. Um, Combine that with the scale, so
Mm-hmm.
you're talking organic modeling, really alien sort of materials. It was just a combination of really, really challenging things. Even the food had to be super detailed because it's like,
Yeah.
it's dragon kebabs. There's
It's a human size food.
right human size. It's as big as a player, if not bigger. And I was painting on this huge texture, and somebody came by my desk when I was working on it, and they were like, That is the most intricate, detailed piece of meat I've seen. What do you like? How big is this thing? And I showed them a scale, like a human scale next to it. And they were like, why are you doing this to yourself? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know.
That's cool. The next one, what skills are most important for like working World of Warcraft as 3D artist?
It's interesting that you mentioned 3D artists because I found there's a lot of overlap between 2D and 3D in terms of sort of like valuable shared skills. At the end of the day, software to me is just another really valuable tool. You have like a Batman utility belt of tools as artists. I feel like
Yep,
software is definitely just
yep.
another tool,
Software
you
is a
know?
tool, and it's all about your art skills.
To me, I think there's three that really stand out. There's understanding lighting,
Mm-hmm.
understanding material rendering, and understanding the principles of a really solid design. So for lighting, a lot of what we do as low poly hand painted artists is baking. Obviously, certain things that come naturally to other game engines, or you just simply model in other game.
Mm-hmm.
So we paint things like soft light, ambient occlusion, baked lighting information, like bounce light right here. It's very important to capture a lot of that information as much as you can in the diffuse texture that you're doing. Sometimes we work with older tech, and sometimes these things go hand in hand. But like when you work with older tech and you do have certain limitations, you have to get creative with how you describe a lot of these, like I mentioned before, these other things that come naturally in other game engines. So I don't know. To me, like having limitations like that is kind of fun because you have to get like you find creative solutions to get the look that you want. Um,
Yeah, that's cool. That's all about hand painted art, yeah. So it's a lot of traditional arts that skills that helping you to get all these textures with the light shadows and knowledge of how to paint the materials because you need to paint everything. So,
Absolutely, and that's a great segue into material rendering. I think the second big thing is material rendering because a big part of that is actually understanding how light interacts with the surface.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
It might sound like an oversimplification, but that's a big part of what we do as hand painted artists. You know, is it more diffused like stone or wood, or is it more high contrast like metal? Sometimes simply highlighting the edge isn't going to give you the result that you want. You have to focus on like how does light actually interact with the surface to describe it to the viewer because we
yeah.
don't have the engine to do that. We're doing it all by hand. Demonstrating that knowledge in rendering materials is is really important because it dictates how you differentiate your materials in your painting. This is one that I struggled with for a really long time,
Mm.
especially with
Yeah,
value control.
that's absolutely not easy to learn. Like learning the software, it could be couple months, but learning some art skills, it takes years.
Absolutely true. Yeah, I struggled with that one for a long time, you know, just trying to control my values, trying to
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
push and pull where I can. But, you know, learning more about the nuances behind rendering materials, how lighting information affects the surface that you're painting, was hugely beneficial for me. And that's why I'm such a huge advocate for working in grayscale in general, because I feel like it helps you master that stuff and helps you understand those nuances of how light affects the surface.
Mm-hmm.
The last one is design principles, and this is one that I think takes the longest to develop because there's we as artists, I mean, I even mentioned this before, we all want to put as much as we can into design, but sometimes
Yeah, and when you have a lot of passion, just want to throw everything in.
exactly. We are very, very passionate as artists as to what we do, especially as hand painted artists. One of the phrases that I have in our prop team pillars, you know, our philosophical pillars that we have in the prop art team is sometimes there is an elegance in simplicity. And, you know, whether it's a weapon or a prop or like an interior slice or an environment piece that you're working on, having that breathing room, I think, is really important. And not trying to cram everything and the kitchen sink into a
Mm-hmm,
design
mm-hmm.
is important
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Um, you know,
You need some place
not
for rest, for your eyes rest, and
exactly, exactly. And not everything is a hero prop. Sometimes,
hmm
like I tell my team, sometimes a
it's very
barrel is just a
difficult
barrel.
for guys with passion to not make everything a hero proof.
I know, I know. It's a challenge. It's something, like I mentioned before, it's something that I struggled with for a long time. Especially when I first started out, I wanted to make everything as epic as possible, but that doesn't mean it needs to be boring. I think that's an important distinction. Just because something is simple does not mean that it needs to be boring. There's there's always storytelling you can do even in simple props. So it takes time to hone on this skill, design as a whole. That's like one of the hardest
hmm
things to teach, I think. It comes with time for sure, but it is important. And that is something that I would, encourage folks to study as they're
Yeah,
developing other
yeah.
skills like 2D and stuff.
It takes a lot of time, tries, exploration, and hard work. Sure.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of 3D guys, they often just using the concept art and never thinking about design, but it's not correct. For if you're calling an artist, you should at least think about it and maybe bring some improvements, bring some ideas.
Absolutely. Yeah. That is a great point.
Cool. So the next one, let's talk a bit about your lead position. Has your job changed at all being a lead artist?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, it's a great question. Yes, my role has changed a lot. Um, I think, transitioning from regular artist into more of a leadership role, I I don't spend as much time creating art as I once did, and for a good reason, and that's okay. Things change when you step into a leadership role. I would say almost any leadership role.
Yep.
Your focus isn't about what you create; it's about the body of work that your team creates, and it's about setting people up for success. Um, it becomes more about what you can accomplish as a team above all else,
Mm-hmm.
I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's like setting someone up for a goal in a sports
Yeah.
game, right?
Yeah.
It's more like yeah, we did that as a team,
The
Um,
mentor guy is a trainer.
yep, yep. It's about setting people up for success and celebrating that as a team. So that's like the biggest one I would say
Mm-hmm.
is that like fundamental shift in your day to
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
It's about supporting the people that you work with. So I do find time to create art in between, meetings, planning prop kits, helping people with their stuff, paint overs. Um, I obviously don't have as much time as I used to, so I get to work on cross promotional things like the Warcraft Rumble arcade cabinet, which was
Mm-hmm.
hugely fun to make. Um, things that maybe are a little bit more technically complex than regular run of the mill props I usually get to work on. I guess more things that require esoteric knowledge, not straight just crates and barrels and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I really try to be the person who can do both, who can lead from a high level, and also hopefully inspire folks with the art that I do get to do from time to time. So,
And
um,
you do it very well. So many people's
oh,
inspired.
thanks, man. Thank you,
Yeah.
man. That's it's kind to say. To borrow kind of like a pirate analogy, I like to be the captain that says, you know, hey everyone, this is where I'm looking to steer us, and why. But I also like to be the captain that can kind of, help load the cannons, help tie the knots and hoist the sails and,
Yeah. Care of the
alongside the
team.
crew. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I think, different people value different things in a lead, and it's important to show folks that, yeah, you're willing to do the work alongside them and you have a clear vision for the team. So, yeah, I very fortunate that I get to still get to create art and work alongside such an amazing team.
Is it still fulfilling you to be a lead artist?
Absolutely. It's a different kind of fulfillment for me. The fulfillment that you get when you invest in your team and seeing them succeed and grow is different than nailing the execution on a bit of hand painted art. I'm very grateful that I get to do both. But there's, not to get too philosophical with you, but there's different types of leadership. Every lead is different. I prefer to do a more servant style leadership with leading by example, and both of those things are fulfilling in their own unique ways. So I know that not every lead might prescribe to that, but I do try to be there for my team. Like I said, I do paint overs for them. I help them with career goals. Extremely fulfilling and satisfying. And then my spare time, I get to do art occasionally too. So it is, I would say it is very fulfilling in
That's cool.
In different ways. Yeah.
That's very cool. It's like a next level, the final stage of 3D artist. Cool. The next question is gonna be about some inspiration stuff. So what helps you create such amazing art? Any special secrets or inspiration sources?
You're so kind to say that. Thank you. There's two main things I would say. One is more of a mindset. The other is more workflow related, I would say. So the first is having a growth mindset. I think that's really important. I've done, gosh, at this point, thousands of props over the years, and
That's
I'm all
so many.
it's a lot. There's a lot of doodads. The one thing that I think is really valuable is having that growth mindset, trying to learn new things. Tinker with how you approach visual problem solving as a whole. I think it's really important to have a growth mindset, whether you're just starting out or whether you've been doing this, you're old and gray like me and been doing this for a while. Having that thirst for knowledge, don't be afraid to try something and fail. The thing that I would say to newer folks that are just starting out is the reason how I'm able to do a lot of this stuff is because I have failed many, many times.
But if you haven't stopped at failing, you are not failed. So, yeah.
Very true. Very, very true. It's that whole success is like an iceberg mentality or meme or whatever, where it's like you only see 10% of it. You don't see the dozens of paint overs, the iterations, the dead ends, the creative blocks, the redos that went into something. Art is like that sometimes. I think that's important to embrace it and learn as you go.
Yeah.
That's part of the creative process in general.
So
that's the first one, I think, is having that growth mindset. The second is more workflow related, like I mentioned before, and that's utilizing a grayscale approach to texturing. That's how I'm able to do a lot of the stuff that I do.
Yeah.
I've painted a ton of different ways over the years. I've worked with dozens of hand painted artists over the years, and there's folks that are just throw down paint on the mesh and paint as is. There's some folks that do grayscale as well, but I'm not here to say you need to do it one way or the other. I'm just going to say what works well for me. Grayscale has really allowed me to focus on my craft and approach rendering in a really different way.
It helps a lot to push like a lot of pixel details, and when you're doing with colors, it's getting very difficult to add so many things.
Yeah, it's very true. It kind of front loads a lot of your creative decision making, which I think is it turns some people off that you're sort of like solving for all X, Y, and Z at the beginning in regards to like important skills. It does let you focus on planar lighting, which is huge. How that imaginary top-down lighting is hitting the the plane, the top-facing planes, the side planes.
And it's also so easy to see the values of everything. Like, yeah.
Yep, exactly. You can plan your values in advance, and you can also clamp your values in advance too. So you're not working with like extreme whites, extreme darks.
Mm-hmm.
It helps you control your values for sure. Helps with softer diffuse light in general. You can highlight and accentuate things if you have a focal point. You work in grayscale, you can account for that up front in the initial value blocking stage. For the longest time, I really struggled with that, was value control and
Mm-hmm.
overdoing
Mm-hmm.
it in many ways. But when you kind of limit yourself and clamp your values and try to approach it with this limited set of values up front with whatever you're painting, it does give you, I think, a more clean, polished look to what you're trying to render. And it can also help with what we were talking about earlier, solid design principles. Where do you focus your contrast? Where do you draw the viewer's eye in? It helps you balance different elements a little bit more cleanly when you have a limited value range from the get-go. So that's a big one. And I think a third one that I would say too, in regards to just grayscale in general, is it helps you de-emphasize a dependency on just like edge highlighting in everything,
Mm-hmm.
and can focus more on that localized value shifts to kind of like describe the surface, not just have a brighter value on every
Yeah.
single edge. It takes some practice, I will say that. In many ways, you kind of have to rewire how you approach hand painting in general, but um, I do honestly believe that it helps kind of elevate
Yep, it
your
helps a
hand painting.
lot. I
Yeah.
started actually painting in grayscale like a year ago, only after, I don't know, 10 years in hand painted art. And it's so easier to control the light, the values, everything. If you are not top one artist in the world, it's very destructive to see everything with colors. So grayscale helps a lot, and still using it for my every next fan art now. I over it.
It's great, yeah, and that's a really good point you brought up too, because let's say you're working on a project and at a studio or something, and the art director says, "Hey, we're changing all the color of the wood from green to purple." Well, it's probably
Mhm.
very minimal painting you'll have to do. You can change the gradient map, you can
Yeah,
change a little bit of extra painting on top, and
it's easy to
you're
get
there.
some new skins also, some different
Yep,
ones. Yeah.
absolutely. It's the hard work is, like I said, kind of front loaded, but the dividends are paid in the flexibility that it offers. So I typically start by establishing a value range, like I mentioned. I make it clamped depending on, what I'm working on. When I say clamped, I mean I don't use extreme like pure white, pure black. I
Hmm.
I clamp it.
Yeah, yeah.
20 to 80 is kind of where my safe zone for most things. But yeah, it helps with those subtle value shifts. The thing that I tell my students is you can do a lot with a little. And what I mean by that is you can do a lot with just a couple of little value shifts in things. You don't need crazy extreme values
Hmm.
to make something look stylized. You can do it with this, you can do the same thing with minimal brush strokes and minimal value changes. After grayscale comes gradient maps. I like using 3 to 5 colors for most of my gradient maps. And I always go from either a warm to cool or cool to warm
Hmm. Hmm.
color relationship. I think oftentimes when I see people use gradients or misuse gradients, they kind of keep their color choices locked into a single color where they're like, oh, hey, I'm doing yellow. I'm going to do, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
the shadows are going to be dark. I'm going to go mid-tone.
That's what
And then,
beginners doing. I would say the student guys, they always staying in safe zone with, on this Photoshop thing. It's only on one line always, and
yep.
yeah, it's not easy to get over it and change it, But yeah, I think it's just need to try and see how it goes.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say I would encourage folks to like, push the analogous colors. Don't just stick to one single color. Color is something that I always struggled with. There's a lot of really great tools you can get in plugins for Photoshop. I use Coloris myself because you can set up complementary color schemes, analogous color schemes, um,
Mm,
triadic color schemes if you wanted to. It's a really, really handy tool, and it helps with gradient maps too when you're trying to pick
that's
like, oh, hey,
interesting.
I want to go cool to warm, or I want to go warm to
Mm,
cool. It'll it'll help you make those choices easier. So just wanted to shout that out too because it's been tremendously helpful. But speaking of color choices, I do see folks that trip up on that a lot, and I think what kind of turns people off to gradients is when they stick to one color or they can make something look kind of like chalky, the end result look chalky or oily, depending on how you set up your gradient map or how you structured your values. But when it's done well and you put thought into the color choices and the values that you pick, I think it looks
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
And with just a little bit of hand painting on top of a gradient map, it's like chef's kiss. Like you can get to that
Yeah,
stage really, really, really
exactly.
quickly.
So,
So
guys, yeah, use different colors. Don't stay in one diapason of colors. It would be 10 times cooler.
absolutely. Oh,
Cool.
and also just a general pro tip here. No one's I really like hearing this, but please do material cube studies. Those are insanely helpful. Nobody likes doing them, I don't think. I haven't met anybody that
Yeah,
really enjoys doing them. Um, you can do them
could
in
be
grayscale
could
too.
be boring for many people, and when it's not easy to paint them, you're starting to sleep a bit during those.
Exactly.
But yeah, material studies must have thing. On my courses, I'm saying to guys, if you're boring to cubes, make some simple object like, I don't know, training sword, and
Mhm.
make it iron, wooden, stone.
Mhm.
So it's
Yep.
maybe not will be that boring, but it still will be like very simple object.
Exactly. Yeah, because you get the same effect, right? You're still
Yeah.
describing different surfaces, different planes, without a simple cube. It could be round like a jar, it
Yeah.
could be a sword, like you said, but it's still really helpful. Kind of like I was mentioning, you can do them in grayscale if you want to. You can practice the whole clamped value range. They're hugely helpful. They've helped me grow as an artist. They don't have to be something that you post on Artstation, right? It can just be for
Yep.
you.
Yep. Exactly.
Uh, so I just wanted to shout out and say, this is a practice skill. You can practice doing those, and they're really handy.
Yep. Cool. Okay. The next one. What do you think about ZBrush and Substance Painter for hand painted art?
I think utilizing programs like Substance and ZBrush are cool, and broadly speaking, can help you with certain parts of the hand painted pipeline for sure. Like no questions asked. I think it really boils down to art style and art direction,
Mm-hmm.
um, and the project that you're working on. For World of Warcraft, that has this legacy, this established art style, it might not be the approach for every single thing that you want to work on. So for me, ZBrush has its uses on really organic elements. I used it for certain things in Maldraxxus, for
Mm-hmm.
example,
Mm-hmm.
with all the bones and
That's very
kind of
interesting.
gross organic stuff I had to make. So it has its uses in that regard. A character team uses it for a lot of things too,
And those
obviously.
organic stuffs, I always also go to ZBrush if I need something, because in my mind it's very hard to imagine how like this organic stuff works, and when you're just sketching on ZBrush, it's getting easier.
Mhm. Yeah, and for some folks, that's what they want is they iterate better in 3D,
Mm,
as opposed to planning it out in 2D and then trying to box model something, and that's totally fine. For the prop art team, typically our stuff is lower poly and meant to be less complex than obviously like a character. So the time that what I found, I should say, is the time that I spend sculpting like certain elements, like fine tuning certain details of a
Mm-hmm.
sculpt, sometimes I don't really see the result in game. So I would personally, I would rather spend my time focusing on, getting the most out of modeling and texturing rather than fiddling with the sculpt for certain things. But I do think it has its uses, if you're sculpting rocks or bones or crazy
Mm-hmm.
organic,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's useful.
Yeah, but probably it will not be like a final result. You need to overpaint after it
Yeah.
a lot for stylized stuff or hand painted.
Yep.
So like
Absolutely.
the goal is to hide everything that looks that there is like some damn standard brush or brush use it,
Newer brushes, yeah, I have those, yeah. It's one of those things where it's like your mileage may vary, depending on what you do. I wouldn't use it for a crate or a barrel for myself
Mm-hmm.
personally, or something Warcraft related, just because it is lower poly and I can do it really, really quickly and easily with box modeling. But for more complex things, I
Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool.
But for substance, I think it's kind of a same boat situation for me. I'm a big advocate for letting my artists, use whatever tools they
Yeah.
they want to use when making awesome art. So we take a very handcrafted approach to the art that we make for World of Warcraft. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors that we do with with the trickery and the texture painting and all the amazing visuals that we craft for the game. Substance might not be the magic bullet that you need for everything hand painted, but I think it goes back to what I was saying with, art direction and art style. It really boils down to that. So could it help you as a stepping stone for certain aspects of the hand painted art pipeline or just stylized art in general? Sure. I think that's a perfectly
Mm-hmm.
valid way to look at it. At the end of the day, to borrow that Batman analogy again, this it's just more tools in our Batman utility belt,
Yeah. Yeah. If you can use you can use whatever you want, probably if you can get the results and it's easier. So why not? And I actually saw some guys been using Substance for gradients, like they painted grayscale and then used gradients. That was very interesting.
There's a lot of cool things you can do with that.
The next one, and I probably already know the answer, but let's talk about it. How important is the 2D art knowledge for a 3D artist? Yeah.
So obviously, I have a lot of opinions on this because I am trained traditionally. So let me just acknowledge that up front. But as it pertains to, hand painted art in general, I would say 2D skills have been one of the greatest assets that have helped me in my career personally. And I'm talking like fundamental,
Mm-hmm.
core foundational building block things. So things like light, shape, proportion, color contrast, all that good stuff. What it really boils down to is practice, right? These are all practice skills. So even if folks don't have like a higher education degree, you can 100% absolutely develop these skills. A lot of those 2D fundamentals really overlap with a lot of the underlying principles of 3D art. At least that's what, I
Mm-hmm.
discovered when I going from 2D to 3D in my own personal career path. There was a lot of things that translated directly into critiques and improving my own work, helping others improve their work, and on executing on things from the stuff that I learned in as a 2D artist. So yeah, absolutely. I would say
Yep,
it's big.
for sure. When you see some like 2D artist saying it's my first 3D hand painted model, and it already looks like very professional one. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and pro tip for those that are looking to expand your 2D repertoire, try doing a paint over of your own work. It'll help you build your 2D skills. It'll help you in giving feedback to other people. And also it'll help with refining your own designs, help with your design skills, which is like one of
Yeah,
those
that's for
big
sure.
long-term.
It's one of the things we are doing on my courses for folks who can't draw the concept like from scratch. If you never touch it, it could be very difficult to paint some diorama. But after like you moderate it, we have a step. You can like overpaint and bring some more ideas, polish it, and then polish the final mesh for it. So, yeah, it's really helpful.
It's insanely helpful. Yeah.
Okay, the next one. Imagine that you just started 3D art and literally have 0 skills, no 2D skills too. But you can choose one of your current art skills to start with. What it would be?
That's a tricky one because there's so many facets to game art, and they're all really important for different reasons. I would say for me, it's probably 2D. It's probably texturing. Once you know how a surface is meant to be described, I think that's a big part of game art.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to the question though about like, you know, what skills to start with, I think that would set you up for success because there are so many online resources dedicated to learning 3D packages, 3D software nowadays compared to when I was first starting, that I think that you could pick that up pretty easily, comparatively speaking, compared to like the texturing aspect. And I think things like game engine knowledge is or like nuances in many ways are something that you learn naturally over time, at least in my experience working on World of Warcraft, that you pick up tidbits here and there. So from just like a purely art point of view, I would say for me it would be texturing.
Yeah, it's like all in one: material study, light, colors, and everything. Yeah, one of the most difficult things for sure. That's a nice peak. I know, everyone know. You're doing amazing mentorship at Brushforge. How it all started, how you get involved.
Oh, thanks, man. That means a lot. I think this started like 6 or 7 years ago. I was a 3D artist at the time. I remember seeing online courses and mentorships for like character art, for concept art, for environment art, but never anything for prop art. And in my brain, I was like, man, there's got to be more folks out there that like doing this ambient storytelling stuff, who like making small objects like I do.
They've been waiting for it.
We didn't really have a tremendous amount of folks who were, uniquely interested in prop to look towards for like new candidates to hire and stuff. And I wanted to do something about that. So Kelvin Tan, who's another lead artist at Blizzard, reached out to me and asked if I'd be interested in teaching a class that was more prop centric through a company called Brushforge. And without even thinking about it, I was like, absolutely. Yes, I would love. I'm in.
Yeah.
That's really how it started, and I've been so incredibly lucky to work alongside so many talented folks through the years. People that took my mentorship, and we were talking about fulfillment earlier. About is my job as a lead artist fulfilling? And in many ways, it's due to the fact that a lot of the folks that were in my mentorship are now working at.
That's how it works actually, because you know what they can do, you know how they work, how they can learn everything. It's easier. Same happened with me. I had some artists on my courses for like 6 months, and then when we've been looking for an artist for League of Legends, and I just reached this guy.
Yeah, it's cool when you work with them, you know that what they're capable of, and I count myself as very lucky because I get to work alongside them now, right? On this amazing project.
Yeah, and you did so many those chests, and if you type like Brushforge on Sketchfab, there's all the list of your artworks, and every of it looks so professional. It's really amazing.
Yeah, I can show a couple real quick.
Yeah, let's go. The Alice. Yeah, I know this guy.
Yeah.
Very, very cool guy.
So many amazing things over the years. Alexander. But yeah, like just working alongside these amazing artists and not only helping them reach their goals, but making something that's prop centric, prop focused. It's a hero prop. Alex.
Yeah, I think just all of those chests workshops really amazing.
Yeah. Been honestly a dream come true, and
Oh,
uh, my
another
teams. Yeah.
another guy from my team.
Yep.
It's cool.
He absolutely he crushed it on this.
Yeah, so
It looks so good.
detailed. Wow. Yeah.
And then it's not just treasure chests. That's certainly like the most common
Mm-hmm.
for folks that have taken Brushforge class before and kind of familiar with the you know the quality bar that we're looking to hit. I offer other things like sort of like a shrine or an altar piece, and Jessica Murphy made this
Oh,
absolutely amazing. I call it a pseudo structure. It's not quite a building,
that's
not quite a prop,
interesting.
thing in between.
Didn't know it's your work from Brushforge course. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I've been talking some years ago with this girl. I'm in love with her arts. Everything she's doing looks so cool.
Yeah. But Jess is insanely talented, and she had taken I think a couple of Brushforge classes before, maybe one or
Mm.
two, and she's familiar with the quality bar we're looking to hit. She knows what's involved with the work, and she's like, "Hey, I want to do something Suramar themed. You worked on Suramar, didn't you?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's do it. Let's make something cool." And she made this
Uh,
insanely talented thing, and she also animated. Let's zoom in. Animated prop at the center,
yeah,
the
this one
heart.
looks very cool.
Very, very cool. Yeah, there's if you search Aeon Core or Brushforge, you should be able to see some of the stuff on Artstation. There's a lot of it. There's so much cool stuff. This is just some of
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's dozens of those amazing works.
a lot.
This one is very epic. And this guy also made, I see, to the World of Warcraft now.
Yeah, he's on the my team actually. We make props together now.
Super
He's on the
cool.
prop art team.
Okay, let's go for the next one. Do you have a special requirements of the like skills for to enroll your class?
Yes. So I would say that it's not really a course for beginners. It's more of an intermediate level type deal. You'll need some degree of hand painted experience to take it and access to 3D package of your choice. I teach in Maya, but other folks work in Blender, Max, whatever. So you'll need to know basic hand painted stuff. You'll need to know basic 3D stuff like, UVing, basic modeling, things like that. It's kind of impossible to teach all the fundamentals and hit the bar within
Yeah,
9 weeks.
that makes sense.
So having those basic skills is necessary, I would say.
And
But
you always can learn these basic skills. There's free YouTube. You don't need to spend your money even in our days for it. There's so many content available. Just go and learn for free, and then you can spend your cash for getting the very rare and unique courses and the skills that not easy to get, and have a great mentor who can help you with it. So yeah.
absolutely agree. Yeah, there's so many resources out there now compared to when I first started for learning this stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
I will say that before the class begins, I do a questionnaire where I sort of reach out to each student. I talk about their skill sets. I talk about what areas they want to improve upon, their career goals
Mm-hmm.
as well. So I can structure my feedback and tailor it for each student. We set up one-on-ones, like meetings each week to talk about things. I do paint overs. I give feedback, talk about long-term goals. So it's really a partnership. I'm there to help with both the short term and the long term. And kind of like I mentioned previously, it's 9 weeks. So we go all the way from concept to completion.
That's super cool. I met so many people who studied with you, and everyone been like 100% happy and been telling only good stuff about your mentorship and courses.
Man.
So yeah, doing a
Yeah,
great
it
job
means a
with
lot.
it.
Thank you. That means a lot, man. Thank you.
Cool. Okay, the next one, the most challenging part in mentorship.
Ooh, that's a tough one. So the course is structured, like I mentioned before, we go from concept to completion in 9 weeks. The first week is really about gathering reference and doing a rough concept of what we want to build. And of course, we eventually model and texture and add VFX and animation. So it's very streamlined, but the hardest part, I'd say, for many folks, and this isn't really something specific for the mentorship, this is something that I think is an area where I think a lot of folks get hung up on, is translating from 2D to 3D. So how do you get from the 2D concept into 3D? Sometimes it can be simple, sometimes it can be too high poly, sometimes things just don't translate from 2D into 3D. We all know this.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes it takes a bit of iteration to get there, but that's why I encourage folks to do orthographic views. So if it's like a treasure chest, you can do a front,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
side, a rear. Makes it a lot easier. You're thinking about how you're.
Yeah. It's also will be easier to model from it if it's orthographic.
Yep, and you're thinking about how it functions too. So if it does need to open, you can plan for that. Where are the hinges located? How does it open? What's going to be visible from the front when it does open? Where do things intersect? Can you hide things? So like you can think about that stuff when you do orthographic things. So the orthographic view does help, I would say, in that regard. But that's usually on like week 2 or 3 of the mentorship, and that's kind of the hardest. Some folks would say, painting is definitely hard, but that's why I dedicate a large portion of the mentorship is dedicated just to hitting that quality bar and the making sure that we're learning not only the fundamentals of how to do this stuff, but also it's going to sound corny. I don't mean to sound corny, but good work habits. So like the work habits that are going to set you up for success long term, rather than just shooting wildly from the hip, trying to make things easier for you so that even after the mentorship ends, you're kind of set up for success in that regard.
Yeah, cool. Alrighty, and the next one, how long it can take till the student can master the hand-painted art?
That's a tough one. That's the thing about
Like very average, not like it's
yeah.
5 months, 2 weeks, three days,
It's that's the thing about hand painted art, stylized art in general. We are a passionate bunch. We love our work. When you truly love something like that, I think you can spend an entire lifetime trying to master it. I've worked with dozens of hand painted artists over the years. I've seen some folks grow in a very short period of time. It's hard to really prescribe a certain number to it. I mean, I've been doing this for over a decade. I'm still learning new things, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
I think what it really boils down to is challenging yourself, having that growth mindset, surrounding yourself with people that are going to challenge you, that are going to support you. That's why community is so important.
Yep.
Stuff like this.
Absolutely agree. It helps a lot.
You need to find people that support you and challenge you. And I've found that once you surround yourself with really excellent people, the other pieces sort of fall into place. So I I wouldn't say you're certainly not going to master something like this in a couple months. A lot of those skills are sometimes difficult to teach, like the design principles, like we talked about
It's
earlier. I
a
think it's
never-ending learning.
yeah, exactly. So it's one of those things that it does take time. It does take I would say a couple years if you're looking to reach that level of mastery. Sure.
Yeah. And when I'm doing any of my artworks, probably it's like 1 week or 2 weeks, and when I see it again, I already don't like it, and I push myself to get better.
I think it's true for a lot of us. As you take a break like that, you come back and you're like, oh, what was I thinking?
Exactly. Cool. And now we're gonna have some very fun questions. Just Horde or Alliance?
Oh, this is a very difficult.
You know, there's only one correct answer.
I know. What's funny is that there's a very clear Horde bias on the World of Warcraft art team, or the World of Warcraft team in general. So I know the correct answer is Horde. I know this is an unpopular answer, but I am an Alliance player. Alliance all the way. I've played the same gnome rogue since.
So you're the guy who been ganking everyone and Strongtorm Valley.
It's me. Yeah. If you see a gnome dart out of a bush, after you die, that's me. No, I'm just joking. I've played the same gnome rogue since 2004.
Wow.
It's the same first character that I made. I don't know, like I mentioned earlier, gnomes are kind of like the underdogs in WoW. They weren't even supposed to be in the initial release. A lot of it was made a couple months before the game went live. I love them. I don't know. I'll never forget leveling with my Alliance friends. All the Alliance starting zones are amazing.
Yeah.
For me, even when I played Classic with my partner and my guildies, we chose Alliance.
Yeah, it's a secret, but I also played in Classic for Alliance. Nobody gonna know it. But I just wanted to explore these new zones, new music, and it was so amazing. So yeah, I had to try it.
Yeah, I will say this though, even though I do play Alliance, the first test character that I made, because before I bought the game, I went to a friend's house back in 2004, and he let me make a character, and I build a couple of things, and that was it. I got to level 2. My first character was a troll hunter.
So that's interesting.
I did play a little Horde, even though it was briefly for 30 minutes, but after I made my gnome, it was
that's cool. My first character being an orc warrior. And that's how I, after that, get my nickname, after I've been clicking out on NPCs, as I was telling ZugZug. And why I had to do this, actually, I've been working on some company who's been doing AAA mobile games, and I had a contract that I can't do any art outside the office, and I had to create a nickname and just hide my art under it. So that's how it started.
That is awesome.
Yeah,
it's a cool story.
So the next one gonna be a small interesting game like we often see on Instagram. And we're gonna figure out Jordan's favorite character on World of Warcraft. At least we're gonna try. So let's start. Jaina or Sylvana?
Oh, it's a tough one.
There's a lot tough one, man.
I love the Kirin Tor and all they stand for, and I love their lore, but Sylvanas is just way cooler.
Sylvana or Khadgar?
Khadgar, Dadgar, or Sylvanas. That's so tough. I'm gonna say Khadgar just because, for many reasons. One, I think he's such a cool character, and two, I love his voice actor. He's incredible.
Cool. Next one, Khadgar or Anduin?
Anduin's had such an interesting story arc. From such a long way. He's experienced so much over the past several expansions. Oh, this is so hard.
All the characters are so great. Yeah, amazing.
I know. They're all so cool. I'm gonna have to go Khadgar again, though. I think he's still.
Okay, Khadgar or Alleria?
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the windrunners.
Larry Windrunner is pretty awesome. She's also one of those characters
Mm,
that is going through
yeah, and
quite
changing
a
a
bit.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah, changing a lot. Still got to be Khadgar for me though. He's got a special
Cool.
place in my heart.
Mhm. Okay, Khadgar or Alexstrasza, the Dragon Queen.
Ooh, that's a real interesting one. I'm gonna say Alex Straza here, just because I really liked uh all the storylines that I played through in Dragonflight with her. Her her new model is so cool.
Mhm.
Her art, just her art style in general, I love it. Yeah, for me. That's I think that's it's
Cool.
tough, but Alex Straza.
Okay, Alexstrasza or Arthas.
Oh, Arthas,
Okay,
Arthas.
next one gonna be the very tough one. Arthas or Illidan.
Oh man, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Illidan is written so uniquely. And I love the voice actor for Illidan as well. I This is so tough. They both have such a legacy.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
have such an insanely huge plot points in the story for Warcraft. People say Arthas is like one of the best villains of all time, one of the best characters of all time, because his arc really spanned across like War 3, and obviously into WoW.
Mm,
So I'm gonna have to go Arthas on this one.
cool. Cool. Okay, Arthas or Trow.
Well, since I am an alliance player, a lot of War 3 as well. I think it's still got to be Arthas for me. Yeah.
Arthas or Xalatat.
Arthas,
Yeah, the new
that's
villain. She's so great.
he's such a
Yeah.
uniquely written villain, and yeah, different type of terrifying. I gotta go to Arthas, man. I have a soft
Cool.
spot in my heart for classic
Yeah.
characters.
Yeah. And the
You know what I mean?
cinematic with Arthas, I think it's my
Yeah,
favorite one. And the music, you
absolutely.
know. Mm,
Hmm.
and next one will be not easy for alliance players. It's Arthas or Varian.
That's a tough one. Talk about characters with like legacy, history,
Hmm.
and just badassness,
Yeah.
uh, if that's a term. Yeah, man, that's gotta be Arthas for me still, though.
Cool. Okay, and the last one, who gonna win? Let's see, Arthas or Pepe Bird. That's the battle.
Oh, that's a battle for the
Yeah,
ages.
yeah.
I've always joked that Pepe is secretly an old god. Some people say that he's a dreadlord. Nobody really knows. So I'm gonna say Pepe just because we don't know what Pepe's capable of. We have no idea.
Oh, so it's some spoilers for future. Cool. Who would thought that Pepe would take over Arthas? That's cool. Yeah, great. Okay, so yeah, we have a winner, the Pepe Bird. That's great. It was amazing.
Absolutely.
Um, and I will have the last question, like your advice for those who just starting the art path. What would you advise?
Don't give up on your dreams, I would say is the first bit of advice that I would say. I'm kind of like living proof of that. I knew that I wanted to work on World of Warcraft for a very, very long time. The art captivated me at such a young age. Still one of my favorite games of all time. And we talked a lot about, practicing skills. I would say keep practicing. Really, really important for no matter what type of art that you're doing. And for those that are interested in, I guess, more stylized hand painted art like us, I would say this. I would say there's always going to be a demand for stylized games or games that have hand painted elements to them. You look at games that have aged gracefully over time, a large number of them do fall into that category. So even though technology might evolve, as it always does, there will always be a place for stylized, hand painted focused games, games that require a human touch. That would be my biggest piece of advice for those that are worried or just cautious about going down this path.
Yeah.
And just to drive another point home that we mentioned earlier is find a good community that challenges you and pushes you. Surround yourself with really, really awesome people, like-minded people, and I think you'll find that a lot of pieces fall into place after.
Yeah, that's great advices. And yeah, artist skills, they never die. The world always will need artists.
Absolutely. 100%.
Cool. So thanks guys for watching. It was Jordan Powers with us.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to talk to you.